Harold never considered himself special. He was an ordinary man, calm, kind, reserved. In his youth, he worked as an engineer, got married, raised 2 children, and after retirement took up gardening and old books. He was already 72 when, for the first time in years, he felt that life could still surprise him. It had been 6 years since his divorce, and he had been alone all that time. But one day, at a watercolor exhibit, he met Sarah. Her gentle smile, the way she spoke, and her soft voice seemed to take him back to his youth. They began seeing each other, slowly, cautiously. For him, it felt like a breath of fresh air. He felt a flutter he hadn't known in years. But when they decided to spend an evening together, something happened that he wasn't ready for. At the moment he wanted to be closer, his body simply shut down. It didn't respond to his desire. Everything that used to be easy and natural suddenly became impossible. Harold panicked. He tried to joke, to ease the awkwardness, but his heart was pounding with anxiety. Sarah gently pulled away. There were no words, but he understood everything. And after that night, he never called her again. Not because he didn't want to, but because something inside him had broken. He sat at home, staring out the window, feeling not just shame, but loss. Not a sexual one. Something much deeper. He decided that something in him was broken, and that nothing could fix it. He told no one. His friends saw him as cheerful and energetic, a man who could quote Shakespeare and fix any wiring, but no one knew he felt empty inside. When he finally came to see me, he wasn't a man with a complaint. He was someone with a silent plea. Help me understand what's happening to me. In my 30 years of practice, I've seen dozens, maybe hundreds, like him. Their bodies change, but no one tells them how to live with those changes. No one tells them that a sex life doesn't end after 60. It simply becomes something else, more conscious, attentive, mature, and it can be brought back. That's exactly what we're going to talk about next. In youth, everything was simpler. Desire came suddenly, without warning, and the body followed without resistance. Harold remembered those years with a soft smile, how effortlessly everything used to happen, as if by itself. Attraction, closeness, passion, it all felt as natural as breathing, and that inner confidence, in himself, in his body, in his masculinity, was an inseparable part of who he was. He never questioned it. He simply lived. Years passed, but the belief remained. If you're a man, things should just happen, without preparation, just because you want them to. Harold didn't realize that this belief had become a trap. When he met Sarah, he was sure things would unfold the same way as before. He didn't speak with her about his doubts, didn't think about preparation, didn't even have an honest conversation with himself. He simply waited for the right moment, just like back then. But the moment came, and his body didn't respond. He experienced a shock that's hard to describe. The same thoughts kept circling in his mind. What's wrong with me? Why did this happen? Am I no longer a man? These questions were tormenting, but even worse than the questions was the silence he chose afterward. Harold didn't explain anything to Sarah, didn't go to a doctor, didn't talk to anyone. He just withdrew into that familiar male silence, the one where shame, pain, and fear are hidden away. I see men like him all the time. They don't come to me right away. First, they go quiet, sometimes for years. One failed experience, and they give up trying. Inside them lives the feeling of defeat. They lose not only a moment of intimacy, but their belief in themselves. It seems to them that if something went wrong, they're finished. But this isn't the tragedy of aging. It's the tragedy of things left unsaid. The truth is, spontaneity no longer works after 60. And that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean something is gone forever. It just means it's time to act differently. Planning isn't boring. It's an act of care. For yourself, for your partner, for your shared future. Intimacy becomes not a sudden spark, but a warm, steady flame. Not an impulse, but a choice. Not proof of strength, but a sign of maturity. Once a man understands this, he stops chasing the past. He starts living in the present. And there, he finds more than he ever expected. When Harold finally decided to return for another appointment a few weeks later, he seemed calmer, though there was still a shadow of anxiety in his eyes. He began with a phrase I've heard from many men. "Doctor, maybe I should just accept." "It?" I shook my head. "Acceptance is not the answer. Understanding, that's what matters." Harold needed to see that what he thought was the end was actually an invitation to a new beginning. Sex after 60 isn't a concession or a faded version of the past. It's a reimagining. It's a shift from reflex to ritual, from spontaneity to attentiveness. It's a moment when intimacy becomes not just a physical act, but a true art of connection. And for that, you must learn again, not as a young man, but as a wise one. I explained to Harold, mature intimacy requires preparation. Not a quick pill, not a heroic effort, but respect for the body. Start small, restore sleep, reduce stress, eliminate interfering medications, check your blood pressure, hormones, and nutrition. It's not about turning love into a checklist. It's about ensuring that love remains safe and fulfilling. We spoke about how important it is to discuss desires, expectations, even fears with your partner in advance. To create not just a moment, but a space, free from pressure. A space where there's no need to prove anything, just an opportunity to be together. Calmly, honestly, with trust. Harold listened in silence, but his eyes softened. He began to understand. He didn't need to be who he was before to be real today. I shared stories of other men. One, aged 68, nearly ended up in the emergency room after trying to impress someone with a pill he hadn't cleared with his doctor. Another gave up on intimacy altogether after a single failure. Both regretted it, but in different ways. One regretted risking his life. The other regretted surrendering his hope. And there's a lesson in that. Sex is physical exertion. For an aging body, it's like climbing a mountain. Without preparation, you can stumble. With it, you can reach the summit. Harold smiled, truly smiled, for the first time. He realized that growing older doesn't take away passion. It gives it depth. And when he began to treat intimacy not as a performance, but as a thoughtful ritual, something new appeared in his life. The sense that he still could. Not the same way, but differently, more wisely. When Harold came to see me for the 4th time, he was no longer the tense, withdrawn man I had first met. He sat more calmly, spoke more softly, and there was a new tone in his voice, not confident, but hopeful. He told me he had met with Sarah, again. No expectations, no pressure, just to talk. They walked together, held hands, laughed at little things. Harold wasn't trying to prove anything. He was simply present. "You know, Doctor," he said, "we didn't sleep together. But I felt alive, as if my heart returned to its place. And in that confession, there was more meaning than in any physical outcome. Because real intimacy isn't just about skin, it's about the soul. It's the moment when someone's touch tells you, you still matter. As men age, many find themselves alone. Some lose a beloved partner. Others drift apart in relationships that have long gone cold. Outwardly, they keep going, shopping, playing with grandchildren, talking about the news. But inside, there's silence. Where warmth once lived, now there's emptiness. And that emptiness erodes more slowly and more deeply than any illness. Martin, another patient of mine, age 74, didn't come to me about intimacy at all. He complained of insomnia, blood pressure spikes, fatigue. I ordered tests, but I sensed the problem wasn't in his arteries. We started talking about his life. His wife had passed away 5 years ago, his children rarely visited, and most of his friends were gone. "I've just lost my taste for life," he said. I explained that physical closeness, even if not sexual, works like medicine for the body. Touch, hugs, even simple presence can trigger the release of oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. These aren't just feel-good chemicals. They strengthen immunity, stabilize blood pressure, improve sleep, and lower anxiety. Intimacy is part of health, and when men who've endured loneliness allow themselves to be close again, real change happens. Harold started feeling alive, not when everything worked, but when he allowed himself to be real, when he stopped fearing his own vulnerability. As we grow older, we need not more passion, but more meaning. Not displays, but connection. Not victories, but touch. And every man who discovers this simple, profound truth begins to return to life, in the fullest sense of the word.